But each week on Time with Elyse, we will be talking to a time capsuler about their time capsule project or something they've discovered. And our time capsulers come from all over the world. If you've been with us throughout this podcast, you know we have people from Bolivia, obviously to New Zealand right now. There's social clubs, activists, schools, families, towns. This one is a gallery, so we're very excited for this. And we're going to be exploring the motivations, the contents, the story behind this time capsule and talking about, the future that the time capsules will look like. And today we're going to be talking with Jennifer. She comes from New Zealand at Sarjeant Gallery. And we're going to pull her up right now. We're going to hop right into it like we always do. But yes, great episode for newcomers to chat with someone international. So stay tuned. And she will be introducing herself right now. Hi, Jennifer. How are
Hello.
you?
Hello. Great to be here and great to be on this podcast. We're pretty excited about the topic. So I am the Curator of Collections at the Sarjeant Gallery, Te Wareorehua, Wanganui, New Zealand. We're a regional gallery and in the lower part of the North Island of New Zealand. And we have a collection of art that spans New Zealand art history, as well as 18th and 19th century European works as well.
Wow. Yeah. You have one of the oldest buildings in New Zealand, right? From my research, I think it said that.
Yes, so one of the earliest purpose-built art galleries in New Zealand, and it's a really spectacular building and people come to visit just to see the building.
Wow. Yes, I'm super excited to hop into this one. It is the first episode where I wouldn't say it's not a time capsule, but it doesn't have an opening date per se. So it's a bit of a different story. And I'd love to hop right into it. First off, how did you guys, I know you found this time capsule. So how did you even find it?
Okay, so our building was opened in 1918, and that was when it was first built and opened. And so 100 years later, it was in need of some redevelopment work. But also, you may have heard of a sequence of earthquakes that occurred in New Zealand, in Christchurch in the South Island. And it meant that there was quite an extensive review done of all our buildings to find out if they were up to safe standards in an earthquake. So our building was deemed to be only a earthquake-prone building. So we embarked on a fundraising effort to raise the money to be able to earthquake strengthen it and also redevelop it at the same time. So the time capsule was found in the midst of this building work.
Wow. Okay, that's great. And it looks pretty good quality. Where did you guys find it? Even going through that building.
Okay, so the earthquake strengthening work involves what they call a post-tensioning system, where they install all these metal posts all through like a grid inside the walls of the building. And in the course of doing the drilling through the roof, right down and deep inside the walls, they came across a pocket of air, and inside that air pocket, inside the wall, they found a glass jar filled with treasures.
Wow, really? Okay, so it was through like the structural repair that they found this time capsule, we want to call it, in a glass bottle, you're saying?
Yeah. We haven't been able to see the glass jar yet. It's still inside the wall, but they drilled a hole in from the side and they broke, because their drill had broken the top of the glass, and they pulled out all the contents, but the walls are very, very thick.
Yeah.
And deep, so and it's not safe to remove the glass jar yet, so we still haven't seen what it looks like, but we have some shards from the broken top.
Well, it has to be good quality for it to have lasted this long, especially in a building wall. So very cool that you guys were able to discover that and not ruin it in the process. I think
Yes.
this is a definite story out of all the other time capsule I've stumbled across because of the drama behind it. So for people who
Yes.
obviously have not, looked into it or heard about this, since we're all the way in America, like let us know tell me the story behind this. I know it's a drama.
Okay, so there is a bit of a story, and it's sort of, this time capsules really brought this story to the fore. But basically, when the gallery, so just going right back, so back in 1914, a local businessman and farmer, when he died, he left a huge sum of money to our city to build an art gallery and to furnish it with works of art for a collection. And so they did a competition for design for the building. And the winning design was this beautiful neoclassical design with a 13-meter dome at the center, and it's in the form of a Greek cross. It's an absolutely stunning design. But that winning design from the competition was actually the designed by a very young articled pupil who was at a firm in Dunedin in New Zealand, which was run by Edmund Anscombe. And this young architect's name is Donald Hosey. But when the design was put forward by the firm, it was stated as being done by Edmund Anscombe, the head of the firm, not by the young student. Oh. So during the course of judging the competition, the architect who was judging it, Samuel Herseger, he sought clarification because he wanted to know exactly whose design it was. Yeah. And when questioned, the head of the firm said, no, it's my design. And when Samuel Herseger spoke to Donald Hosey, Donald said, oh, well, I'm young, I'll have other opportunities.
Oh, wow.
So he didn't challenge his boss about it. But so the gallery building was constructed during the First World War. And so they had to have some, and Donald Hosey was called up to the front to fight, but the mayor of Wanganui managed to get some permission for Donald Hosey to stay behind in stay behind in New Zealand so that he could finish all the drawings for the building before he headed off to the front. And the incredible tragedy is that Donald Hosey actually died at Passchendaele within 3 weeks of the laying of the foundation stone for the building. So he didn't get another chance. So now the building on the sort of the foundation stones, it says that Edmund Anscombe is the architect. There's no mention of Donald Hosey in the building. And so what was discovered inside this time capsule is a letter written by the clerk of works on the original building site saying, I wonder if when this time capsule was discovered, whether the vexed question of who is really the designer of this building will have been settled by then.
Wow. Okay. So someone took credit for something that wasn't theirs, essentially. And they ripped off a young architect or a designer. What would you call him?
Well, the young one was I think they call it an articled pupil, or for architecture. But it's probably the norm at the time that the senior person at the firm takes the credit. But when questioned, he didn't speak the truth. But so this time capsule was a complete surprise for us. We didn't know it was in the walls, and it's a complete incredible coincidence that they were drilling right where it was, because the drilling points are about 1 meter apart in the building. So it's pretty remarkable that we did discover it. And we knew nothing about the person who left the capsule, the clerk of works. His name was John Cornfoot Brody. And his letter that he wrote inside the capsule was dated the 28th of January, 1918.
Oh, wow. So it's very, very old.
Very old. And it's a year before the building opened. So.
Oh, okay. I wanted to pull up a picture of it just for people who weren't very familiar. Trying to get a good one, but this is what you're talking about, right?
Yes, there's the dome and there's the front doors. So the time capsule was found inside the building in an interior wall just to the left of those front doors.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I love it. It's really, really beautiful. I'm sure a lot of people, as you said, come just to see the building. But yes, the whole drama behind it was that the person took credit when they shouldn't have. And now you found it years later, a while later, and now you can give credit where credit is due.
Yes, we were already aware of the true name of the designer of the building, but it's what we didn't know is that the people working on the building at the time knew about this kind of controversy. And what's interesting is in his letter, John Cornfoot Brody says he's unwilling to say Edmund Anscombe's actual name, so he draws a line wherever his name appears. And so he says, it is common report that they who gets the credit and benefits did not, but that a young man killed in France should have all the kudos. However that may be, if it is so that has done what is commonly believed, then he is no gentleman. Personally, from my intimate knowledge of the drawings, which is not shared by, I am of the opinion that the common report is right. The foremen and contractors are of the same mind, also the chairman of the committee and leading solicitors. So he wasn't the only one who was aware of the discrepancy between the name and the actual designer.
Okay, so it was like a secret.
A little bit, but not too well concealed, because when Donald Hosey stayed behind to finish all the drawings, he didn't sign or date a single one of them.
Oh, wow.
Then the day that he left to go to the front, I think it was the next day, Edmund Anscombe signed and dated every one of them that date, which is a little bit unusual.
Oh, so he like backlogged it, like went back and put his name and stuff on it. So, wow, okay, yeah. So this poor person was cheated out of recognition, then passed away. There's a lot of history behind that. So I was actually looking into the picture that you guys included in your library record, and it looks like there's a lot of contents to this time capsule, and they're very old. So for people who are not familiar, which is probably everyone here, can you describe, what's in the time capsule? What was actually included when you found that documentation?
Yes. So as well as this letter, John Cornfoot Brody put into the time capsule 2 newspapers, which are both from the Wanganui city, and they're both dated the day after the laying of the foundation stone, and so they have reports in them all about laying the foundation stone for the Sarjeant building. But they also have a huge amount in them about the war and the front and what was happening. He also put in his business cards. And what was quite exciting for us is he put in a copy of the architectural report, which was done for the competition in 1916. And we didn't have a copy of it anywhere in Wanganui. There's a couple of original copies in collections elsewhere in New Zealand. I think I've only found 3. So for us to have an original copy of this booklet is pretty exciting. We only ever had facsimiles. Also included were some sort of archaeological items found at the site, such as a clay pipe and metal button. And oddly enough, some sycamore seeds. But also, he also put personal things in. So he put a photograph of, so John Cornfoot Brody put in a photograph of himself with his 2 sons. And he talks about one of them is in his letter, he talks about how one of them's actually at the front. He says, this is how he describes them. He says in his letter, I have enclosed a photo of myself and my 2 sons who may or may not be on top when this is opened. The elder is a member of the firm Treadwell, Gordon and Brody. The younger is also a barrister at present in France. Captain H.G. Brody, which was the younger's name, may he be spared to come home to us all. And then he ends it, Revolution in Venice. So he's got also a postcard sent from the front from his younger son saying, and it's a postcard of Ypres Cathedral during the fire in 1914 and after the bombardment.
Yeah.
In 1917, and he says, Dear Dad, a famous place of which you have no doubt heard a great deal. So that's on his postcard in there as well. And everything was wrapped up in brown, packing paper. And it was in incredibly good condition.
Really?
When it was out. It was really dry and really, the papers were only slightly yellowed. So pretty amazing.
And the actual photograph, what did that look like?
It was folded to fit it into the jar, but it was in pretty good condition. So, he did a good job of sealing the jar. But what's really interesting is that the oldest son, his name, I've just got to find it, Archibald Douglas Brody. So he, I did a bit more research, and I discovered that his daughter, so the granddaughter of John Cornfoot Brody, was actually an artist in Wanganui, and we have a huge amount of her work in our collection. And what's quite amazing is that we did a big exhibition of her work on the last exhibition that we had before we closed the building for the redevelopment work. And that gallery that her work was shown in was right next to where the time capsule was found.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Bit of a family building, it feels like, at this point.
Yeah. So her name's Joan Green. Oh. And so there's lots of connections. And what was quite lovely is when we found it, we started talking about this discovery, all the family members came visiting and contacted us. So descendants of John Cornfoot Brody, they travelled from other parts of New Zealand to come and see the time capsule and to talk to us. And they were able to give us more information about him and his family because we didn't know about him at all.
Wow. So it became kind of a hot spot for people, bucket list to go and see the building where all the connections were.
Yes. Wow. And also we got quite a lot of media interest. So we had things on the national radio program. I did interviews on there, and we had TV One News in New Zealand come and do a piece for the primetime TV news, and that was quite interesting seeing them clambering over the building construction site trying to take the footage.
Yeah.
But and then all the papers and everything, so it's really captured people's interest and people's imagination.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite remarkable, especially that the photo was able to be preserved in that way. I think it's because it was inside of the wall, from what I'm understanding, right? So it was away from light because, photographs, they age when it's in the light, they get discolored. So maybe the way that it was stored, but it's very difficult to store photos and documents for that long in such good quality. I wanted to pull up a picture actually of the library record. I'm not sure if you've gone on to the World Cat and pulled it up yourself. Have you seen it before? Okay. So no. I'm going to do it. But obviously for maybe people that just joined the live podcast, why is this time capsule meaningful to your gallery specifically? It definitely changed the way that you guys viewed the building, but for you guys, why was it so meaningful to find this piece of history?
So for us, I think it was just incredible. We've got the information that we already had about the controversy about the design of the building, but what we didn't know is that the people working on the building construction and working on it actually knew this, and we didn't know that they were concerned about it. So it gives you the actual emotions and the thoughts and feelings of the people who were there at the time, who were concerned about the lack of acknowledgement for Donald Hosey. It lets you know that that was an actual valid concern that they had, and it makes it far more personal. And I talked to a heritage architect, Chris Cochrane, in New Zealand, and he said that during the course of building works, you always have to go back to the designer and clarify sort of corners and areas of the building and sort of resolve issues as they arise. So he said it would have become quite apparent to those who are working on the building that the person they were conversing with, Edmund Anscombe, wasn't actually the designer. Right. And that's how they would have probably understood, because it became obvious to them that he wasn't the one who came up with the design. So, yeah.
Can you repeat the designer's name, the actual designer?
So the actual designer is Donald Hosey, and the owner of the firm was Edmund Anscombe.
Wow. So did you guys do anything to kind of honor Donald and his work after he had been forgotten about, it seems like, for so long, kept in the shadows?
Well, there has been we've done a number of articles, and other people have as well. So there has been quite a few attempts over the years to sort of redress that imbalance. And we're currently working on how and making decisions on how we're going to acknowledge him when we reopen after all the building work is finished and the redevelopment is finished. But also I think, we'll be sharing this story, and we'll also be showing the contents of this capsule and talking about this in the new building, so people will be able to come and see it and sort of find this out for themselves. So he'll definitely be acknowledged in the building, but we haven't made any decisions just yet as to how.
Oh, cool. So you're going to make it so that people can go in and check it out for themselves.
Yes. Also we're making plans for laying our own time capsule as well.
Really cool. I love that. When galleries do time capsules, I think they're wonderful to do. But the fact that you guys found this is really, really incredible. And how long is your reconstruction going for? When are you guys going to reopen? Do you know yet? Or was it thrown off COVID?
Yeah, so it's well underway, and we're looking for it to be finished in the mid to late 2023. And then we'll reopen about 4 months after that. So,
wow, yeah. That's really great. Then looking back at it, now that what you've learned, were you guys like frustrated or angry when you found out that? Did you feel like you had been lied to when you discovered the real designer?
I'm not sure. I mean, then we've known for a long time that there was a discrepancy. So it is in letters and records and things. But I think the fact is that on the foundation stone on the building, it says Edmund Anscombe and not the actual designer. But I think that becomes part of the history and part of the story. So that should never be erased. But we can sort of educate people and let them know what happened and who came up with the design and the story. I think it makes an incredible story for visitors to kind of hear about. And also you have to think about the culture at the time and how things worked. If he was a junior in the firm and this other guy was the owner of the firm, so it's a little bit hard to, it's easy to be really, really harsh and really critical, but actually there's a different culture that probably operated at the time. So try to be balanced in how we talk about it and how we interpret that story. But does sound quite dramatic.
No, I love it. It's really cool. And I think that it's a good idea not to erase his name, the erasure of history. I feel like that would almost throw off the balance. It's a good idea to kind of include both, and then people can go into the museum and learn more, or the gallery, my bad, and go in and learn more about the actual history of it. But yeah, there's definitely kind of a level as well if he was the owner, where he had more authority and more power to put his name on something that, might not have really been his design. But regardless, it has been able to connect a ton of people, brought a lot of people in, and gotten a lot of media interest. So do you guys think that, time capsules, obviously this is a different kind of one. It's unique in the fact that you didn't create it, you found it, and there's no opening date per se. But do you think they're a good way of preserving history for, if other galleries come across something like this?
I do think so. And I think what's quite special about this one is it's not an official one. Yeah. So it was a very personal selection of items that this John Cornfoot Brody obviously thought would be important to keep and to show. And I just, what was quite lovely is one of his descendants, I think she's a great granddaughter of his. She said when she was growing up, and she was told that one of her ancestors had left a time capsule in Wanganui, but she didn't know where it was, and she imagined it was in the ground. So there was a little whisper kind of going through the family, but no one actually really knew the details of where this time capsule was left. So that's been quite exciting. But I think, this one in particular, I think is quite special in that it was a personal one that he obviously decided to put it in there. And it makes me wonder, did anyone else leave one in the building? Will we find one somewhere else, or are there more waiting to be discovered? because when the builders were working on the building this time, they didn't know there was a void in the wall there. It wasn't part of the plans and it wasn't recorded. So, yeah, it was quite a surprise to them. And now they've had to adjust how they work on that wall because there's a void inside there, which is where the time capsule was placed. That wasn't, so he must have altered the
Wow.
building work to
Yeah.
create a void to put it in.
So like altered the design, you're saying?
Well, I'm not sure, but it's
I guess we really
possible.
don't know, but we can speculate.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
was like, oh, I want to put a time capsule in, just don't fill in this part of the interior of the wall. So, yeah, I don't know.
He was like leaving his mark. Maybe he knew that he wasn't going to get credit or something like that. Maybe there was talk and he was I'm not sure. I mean, we'll never know. But the beauty of it is that most physical time capsules, 90% of them are lost, forgotten about, especially when they're buried in the ground because Mother Nature is very strong and, water and dirt and everything just kind of moves around and it frequently becomes lost. So storing it in a wall, I guess, is a really great way to do it. But I am surprised, one, that it lasted so long, and I'm surprised that it was actually found because, again, that is in that 10% of time capsules that's actually found. So his family had, it seems like probably a family like story, maybe a family myth or an old tale that was able to come true. So who did you contact first when you found out? I mean, in his family, that there was in fact a time capsule in the wall.
Well, we didn't know any of the family, so because so many generations have passed.
Yeah.
And so by putting it out in the media, and what was quite lovely is the one who was telling us about how she had this sort of memory as a child of hearing that there was a time capsule. She's been sort of the keeper of the family history. And so she had been given a lot of family records and photographs by her grandmother, and she'd put them all into albums and done all this work. And she said she was sort of wondering what to do next. And then she was watching the news and saw a picture of her, that one of the ones she'd been putting in the photo album, and she started screaming at the TV, "That's my family!" And that's so. It's just that's kind of how they sort of saw it in the media, and then they made contact with us. But what's quite lovely is we've got Heritage Month coming up in September this year, and we'll show the time capsule again and tell the story again. And the family, as a result of this time capsule being discovered, they're organising a reunion and they're having it at our temporary gallery space, which we're using until we can go back to our home. So they're going to have a family reunion and have the time capsule there, and all of them will be able to see it. And a lot of these family members that didn't know each other existed, they didn't know, and they've never met each other. So it's created this whole wonderful connection for the extended family to reconnect and to share their stories and things. So it's a living thing. It's not. So the time capsule, I don't think I said, was in the wall for 103 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That is a considerable amount of time. That's almost 5 generations of your family. So when you were naming all of them, I was counting on my fingers. It's 4 generations. 150 is 5 generations. So that's quite a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice. It's lovely that it's they're discovering more about their ancestors and finding out information that they didn't have. And I think at this reunion, they will be able to share more photographs and more information and more connections and things. So who knows what the outcomes will be. But I think, how could John Cornfoot Brody have known that 103 years later, all his family will be gathering to remember this action that he took? And the other thing I should mention is that his son, who was fighting at the front, he did survive and he did come back.
Wow.
So, yeah.
A lot going on with this one. I love it. Yeah, it's such an interesting story. It is definitely one of the first that we've had. And I want to actually show you how to find it digitally, since you guys have registered it through the International Time Capsule Society. Maybe you could let the people know that come through your gallery, if they want to see it more and learn about it, they can find it on the WorldCat, because you guys are on the largest library database. It's a global database. I don't know if you're familiar with the WorldCat or the fact that you guys were featured on there, but I wanted to share my screen and show you the time capsule. So let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
So this is your library record. You just have to look up
Yes.
Sarjeant Time Capsule, and then you will find it, Not Forgotten at the end. And this is, on a library database so people can view it for I don't know, a long, long time. And you just click View Online. It brings you to the Not Forgotten library. And then you scroll down, and of course, it has all of the information. There is no opening date because it's not a traditional time capsule, so it's one of the ones that you guys, found. And it has everything that you need to know all about it at the bottom, including the letter that you read, which is really great, and the contents, the publisher, the language, all of that. The best part about it, though, if you open it up, oops, and you guys are able to see this whenever you want, if you want to put it, especially when you have that reunion. But
Yes.
this is the registration form, and then there you are, sitting in front of the time capsule. And I think it's great because I did not realize how big it was. I thought that just after reading the short little description on the record that it was a small letter. I didn't realize that there were so many more contents. So, yeah, I wanted to show you while you were talking about it. But is there anything you wanted to elaborate on when it comes to these contents? You could see that the documents are yellowed and they're aged, but they're definitely in very good quality for being 103 years old.
Yes, I just wanted to point out, just by where my hands are the shards of glass from the top of the time capsule. And I think the glass jar might be about sort of the size from your elbow to the top of your hand, kind of, it's quite large. And the glass itself is very thick, and it has a lot of kind of marbling effect on it. So I'm really interested to know what it actually looked like and how was it sealed. I don't know that because we can't see it. It's so deep inside the wall.
Was it like the marbling design makes it seem like it would have been like a vase or,
it's hard to know. Like it's on the surface, but it's not like a patina over the years. It's actually part of the glass. So I'm really curious to know what this jar looks like. And once they get inside the wall, we'll have more information to be able to share with people.
Yeah, I hope that you guys can find it because there's people, all over the world trying to make time capsules, and they think really particularly about how they're going to store their contents to make sure that they last for as long as they want. So some people use like military grade aluminum when they're building their time capsules, or they use special paper to ensure that it doesn't age and fall apart like, paper does. So this person, it feels very organic because he didn't quite put, from my understanding, it didn't seem like he put that much effort into it. He just kind of stuck it in the wall, hoped for the best, and it actually turned out better than people who put months and months into making time capsules, if you know what I mean.
Well, you can't see in that photograph all the brown paper he wrapped everything in as well.
Oh,
so
yeah, there's no brown paper there.
Yeah. So I don't know if that made a difference, and all the letters were inside envelopes, but I think it's about sealing it. And the other thing is that the wall that he selected was an internal wall, not an external wall. So there'll be a lot less variation in temperature and everything in there, I guess. And the walls are very thick. They're double brick walls. So that as well, I think all of those things combined meant that it preserved so well. And within hours of the contents being pulled out of the jar, the newspapers started to yellow a bit more.
Ask about that. Yeah. Because what have you guys done? Now someone's preserved it in the wall. You found it. You've taken it out. Physical rot is definitely like an enemy of time capsules. So, has your gallery done anything to ensure that this is going to continue to survive as long as it has been?
Definitely. So thankfully we're well equipped with lots of archival storage materials. But also another thing that happened is the drilling process involves water. So when the glass jar was broken, then water entered and the contents did get slightly damp. So first of all, I aired it all out and put interleave of tissue between the pages of the booklet, and then changed them out and put more in. Also, we have a collection store which is climate controlled, so temperature and relative humidity are kept at a very constant level. And so we're able to store them in optimum conditions, keep them away from light, and also use archival or acid-free tissue or sort of materials that they're packed in. Yeah. But also more recent sort of archival practices not to try and flatten things. So let things sort of do their natural curling and things. So that's quite hard because I just want to flatten them all. Yeah. But they've all kind of curled up a little bit more since being exposed. So we'll exhibit them, but not all the time.
Right. So you have like a special time that you'll bring them out, but for the most part, where will they be stored?
At the moment in our collection store, we're bringing them out again for the Heritage Month and for the family reunion. And then we'll make a plan for what we'll do when we reopen in the new building and how we tell this story. And I think the natural light is kind of the worst thing. So the UV and everything can break down papers a lot more. And the other thing that we do is when we handle paper, we always wear gloves because the oils that are present on your hands, you won't see it, but in 10, 50 years time, those oils will discolor the paper and cause sort of, yellowing, browning spots and things from where you've touched it. So that's other things you can do to try and prevent that degradation of the paper as well.
Yeah. Have you guys ever thought about like maybe digitizing them? Are you able to do something like that for the family members so that they can have copies?
Yes, we've got a gallery photographer and he's taken extensive photographs of every item. So every page of the booklet, every page of the newspaper, front and back of everything. So we've got all that digital record and we can share that with the family and show those images as well as showing the objects at appropriate time periods.
I think I saw those on your website because I think I saw the blueprints for the building. Is that what you're talking about as well?
The blueprints weren't in there, but the booklet from 1916, that was when, so Samuel Hurst Seeger was the lead architect on the competition and he was the judge for the competition. So he laid out the requirements of what he wanted the design to fulfill and how it would work with the surrounding landscape and fit into the city design. And he also, so that booklet was the one that was in the time capsule. But the blueprints, we do have copies of those. We already did. And they're quite large. The blueprints are very big. So that I don't think they would have fitted in.
And you said, as it was a competition, what was the prize? I know it was money, but how much was it again?
I'm sorry, I don't know, actually.
Online. So I wanted to ask, but I don't
I'll need to find that out. I'm not quite sure. I'm assuming the firm would have got any prize money, but I think also the honour of being the winning design, because this building, there's nothing else like it in New Zealand. And it's a Category 1 listed heritage building. And the way that it's positioned, which you couldn't see in the photograph you showed, but it's positioned on a hill overlooking the city. And there's a lot of kind of construction around it that sort of works with the symmetry of the building. So there are these amazing veteran steps leading down from it. And then at the other end of the street that those steps are centered on is another sort of facade for an area called Cook's Gardens. That's all follows the same symmetry. So it's part of a greater design in the city with this incredible symmetry that sort of works. And because the building itself is sort of in the shape of a Greek cross, there's a real symmetry there. And then you've got behind, if you're facing the front doors, behind you is the sea, and then in front of you are the mountains. So Mount Ruapehu is visible in that photograph you showed. So there's this sort of conduit between the mountains to the sea, which is very important to the local Māori people, the iwi.
Yeah. I can just picture it now. I used to live in Australia, so I visited New Zealand and I went to Queenstown. So I know that there's so many elements of New Zealand that, having that location for the gallery is just perfect because you can see everything that New Zealand has to offer in one centralized spot. So I just have to ask, how far is it from Queenstown or, a bigger city?
Okay, so Wellington is the capital city in New Zealand, and that's at the bottom edge of the North Island. And so we're sort of halfway along the west coast between Wellington and New Plymouth. So it's about 2.5 to 3 hours drive from Wellington. And Queenstown is in the South Island, far, far down, a long way away. Yeah, so we're well placed in terms of if you come to visit New Zealand, you go to Wellington. We're just a short drive north from there. And it's a really beautiful coastal sort of drive. And there's amazing things to see along. And if you want to go to the mountains, then we're kind of on the way to that as well. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's a beautiful location.
So for any of our listeners listening, if they want to plan a trip to New Zealand to see this gallery, you definitely think that they should start which spot?
Most travelers will either fly into Auckland or Wellington. So, and if you're traveling internationally, yeah, you'd probably arrive at one of those. But the North Island is beautiful, and the South Island is just awe-inspiring in terms of the scenery.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more population that lives in the North Island than the South, but the South Island is a lot bigger. So yeah, there's too much to see.
Yeah.
But what?
Like,
Yeah.
because this is such an old time capsule, what the lay of the land looked like when they were creating the gallery. Like what buildings were near it, if they had a better view of the sea because it hadn't been, it hadn't been worked on, there hadn't been additions. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Well, what's quite special is that at the time that the gallery was built in when it was opened in 1919, Wanganui was one of the main centres in New Zealand. And the reason for that was because the Wanganui River, which Wanganui city or town was right at the mouth of that river comes from Mount Ruapehu to the sea. So that's got that link. But that river is the longest navigable river in New Zealand. And so before there were roads, everyone was using the river as like a natural highway. And so when the settlers came to New Zealand, there was a real focal point on Wanganui. And so the early European settlers, the ones who had money and wealth, they were really keen to put money into establishing Wanganui. And so they wanted to create this cultural centre. And so where the Sarjeant Gallery is located is actually on a hill. So you can see the sea and you can see the mountains from there. It's at a very prime position, right overlooking the main street in town, the main shopping area. And around the gallery is a heritage library, which was the original public library. There was a school on the site, and also there are war memorials on the site. So some people have called it New Zealand's own Parthenon or sort of Acropolis, because there's all these amazing buildings, sort of cultural institutions located on the site. But the site has a lot of significance. It's actually called Pukanamu, Queen's Park. And there is evidence of pre-European occupation on the site. And so during the course of the building work, they've been doing a lot of archaeology and just checking for finds and checking before any building work is done. But also it was a site of the Rutland Stockade. So during the colonial times, they had a stockade there and a garrison there, which was involved in sort of some of the interactions between those who are the colonizers and also the iwi or the Maori family, the Maori people who are living in that area. And then the gallery was built on that site. So it's a very deeply historical and complex site. So.
Yeah, it sounds like the center point for history in New Zealand. And it also sounds like it's constantly changing. So if you guys do create a time capsule for the gallery, like as you mentioned earlier, what do you think you would put in it? Would you, take photos of the current surroundings? So I know it's going to look different in 100 years from now. Absolutely. A lot of people choose to do that when they do time capsules, to take pictures of the surrounding area. And then, you could, I don't know if you're familiar with people holding those photos of the old skyline, and then like the buildings have either been added to it or have fallen. In America, obviously, with 9/11, we have the Twin Towers used to be there, and now they're not there anymore. So do you guys think you would do something like that to just get an idea of what the building looks like right now?
Well, we're working on this right now. So we're currently preparing the contents to go into the our new time capsule. So we're doing things like photographs, as you say, of the site, but also photographs of the building work, because right now the building is stripped back to its bare foundations, and we're seeing the building site when you're allowed on there in a way that no one will ever see it again.
Yeah.
So, so we're showing lots of photographs of that, and we're printing them all onto archival paper, sort of acid-free paper, to try and preserve it.
Yeah.
And we're putting them into archival enclosures as well. But also, we got members of public to write down their thoughts. And so members of public had a chance to come into the gallery and write down a piece that could go into the time capsule.
I love
so that, and sort of imagining when it will be opened again and how old they'll be and what will the world be like.
Yes, I love that. I think even looking back at history, only big rigid institutions were in charge of archival and who was remembered, essentially. So I think, including the average local person is really interesting, and adds that layer of context. You don't have to be rich and famous and wealthy to have your history remembered and revisited, hopefully when they're alive to open that time capsule. I'm not sure. I was going to ask you guys, what was the duration that you were planning on doing?
I think at this point we'll have it in a site that isn't kind of completely blocked off. So we're wanting to have it opened in 50 years, and then they can kind of readjust the contents and seal it up for another 50 years. So we'd have it kind of well documented and everything. So as opposed to the one that we found, which no one knew about and no one knew the location of it. So this one will be, I think, I'm not sure, but I imagine that visitors to the gallery will actually be able to know where it is sort of placed as well, and have a story about that. So but these are all still things that we're still deciding on. We've got a bit of time.
We have some insider info on the Hidden World of Time Capsules podcast today, but this is really great. And I think when you guys open it in 50 years, it's going to be a different world. Absolutely. It's changing so quickly as we're living through it right now. So what do you think the future of time capsules is going to be like? Can you imagine, preserving video per se? I think that would be interesting too, because we're talking about photos, but what about, video?
Yeah, I mean, I think the digital formats are quite problematic because things are changing so quickly, and in terms of technology. And I mean, when I was younger, we had those, what they call floppy disks and things, and now nothing will read those disks.
Exactly.
And Pardon?
Technology obsolescence, right? Just like the evolution, going so quickly.
So in 50 years, what we think is cutting edge won't be, and so there may not be devices that can read that. So I think it's quite interesting how the older methods of paper and everything can be more enduring rather than the modern digital technology, because it won't be modern in 50 years. So and the same thing if you have web links or whatever references to that. Who's to say those web links would still be available in 50 years' time?
Yeah, that's, true. Very good point. We have the internet is seeming to be more unstable than we thought. And the tech giants were definitely experiencing how powerful technology has become, and how it's kind of the town center for people these days to be on the internet instead of in person. So it's an interesting point. And I see what you mean. So you are more of a physical time capsule person, that you'd want to stick to that.
I think so, but then if there is some facility online whereby you can store things digitally, like digital video or sound recordings and things, and if that was actually intentionally preserved online for 50, 100, 150 years kind of thing, then sure. But in terms of, I think what we're doing by putting it inside the building, I think it's better to have something tangible that we know will still be readable as long as it's been preserved, rather than something that could be obsolete and inaccessible. So if we put a memory stick, like a USB one in there.
Yeah. Oh, no, I get that. I think it'd be cool to do a physical time capsule, and then like the backup could be digital, just in case. And then even on the library record that I showed you, actually, on the WorldCat, you can find time capsules that the International Time Capsule Society has digitized. So you can look them up, you can look at the videos, you can look at the photos. So it kind of gives that safe space for their precious media, just, in case, because the biggest issue is just losing these things. It's, not so much about, I guess, caring for them, because this one held up quite well, 103 years, but it's about losing them. So I think maybe just that extra safety measure, like almost like insurance, the ultimate insurance. But I think that what do you think the world's going to look like in 50 years when you guys open up these time capsules?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine because it just feels like so much is happening in the world right now. There's so many kind of a climate change with COVID-19, global pandemics and wars and all sorts. So it's hard to imagine. And yet some things still stay the same. Like there are some things that just continue through and amidst all this chaos and everything. So I hope that our gallery and the collections and these sort of our material culture that's preserved in galleries and museums, I would hope that would still all be there, with more layers of sort of more things, more recent things being collected and everything. I would hope that the way that we interpret things is improved in terms of being more inclusive of other cultures and other perspectives. Because say, for example, the Sarjeant Gallery and this original time capsule, that was a white man leaving that there, but it'd be really good to get perspectives from other cultures and other people, or the local, the Māori people as well, sort of including more than one person's perspective. But it's kind of hard to imagine. And I think it's quite lovely in terms of the letter that John Cornfoot Brody wrote, where he's sort of trying to imagine when his time capsule will be opened, when he said that he and all the work hands on the site were all speculating as to when it might be opened. Right. But he didn't think he would be alive because he was 59 at the time he laid the capsule. And he also wonders whether his two sons may or may not be on top, or so may not be alive when the capsule is opened. So he's definitely, when he lays the capsule in the building, he's thinking about it and wondering who was going to find it and when. And I think it's quite nice to see that kind of, because that's the same way we feel when we're laying the time capsule now, and we're wondering who's going to pick it up and who's going to read it and what will things be like. It's quite an amazing kind of thought process, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I wondered, were you able to find out anything more about his sons? Obviously, you found their whole generation. How did you do that? That was my biggest question I forgot to ask, but how did you actually track them?
There are really good sites for like family history, so genealogies, but also once we found out that John Cornfoot Brody's granddaughter was Joan Green, the artist, so we were already in contact with her son. Her son lives in England, and so we were able to make contact with that branch of the family. And then also just the family members coming in contact with us through the media attention. Yeah. So we were able to piece things together, and we're able to identify other buildings that John Cornfoot Brody worked on in the local region as well. And so we're still finding out more information about that.
Yeah. It's quite amazing to think that technology actually unified everyone to be able to discover this as well. So a lot is happening. I know, this would have never even happened before the internet. So that's something to think about too.
Yeah. And one other thing that I didn't mention before is so John Cornfoot Brody put in a photograph of himself and his two sons. But what he doesn't mention anywhere is that he had three surviving daughters as well.
Oh, wow.
And most of the descendants are from the daughters, not the sons. So, yeah, so that was quite interesting. It's just the attitudes at the time. Here are my
Yeah.
sons, I'm so proud of them. But actually, he had three daughters as well.
Wow. Completely neglected to put their names in.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the sons just were more important back then, I guess. But now we have more gender equality. So definitely hear some.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. The times have definitely changed a lot. I couldn't even imagine my dad writing something and not including me, but including my brother.
And even to the extent of pictures, their names, where they worked, what their jobs were. And obviously one of them was fighting at the front at the time, so was foremost in his mind. But I just thought I was quite shocked when I found out, he had three surviving daughters. There was a fourth one who didn't survive, but he had all these daughters, but only the sons are mentioned. But I mean, that's the beauty of it. It tells you about a lot more information about the time and the culture at the time and the attitudes as well. So it is like a snapshot.
You were taking the words out of my mouth today. I was just going to say it's a snapshot of history. And that's the beauty of time capsules and why people are, obsessed with doing them and keep doing them, because there's nothing quite like taking little remnants, and even just him not acknowledging his daughter shows you the attitude around gender at that time, which is just the context like embedded within it is really insane. So I am really excited that you guys found it, and for other galleries, just any advice you'd like to give to them, because you guys did find this accidentally. So maybe doing construction, being more careful. You never know what you're gonna come across, but yeah, anything special? I know that this is kind of a one-off, I feel like, but maybe there will be galleries in America that might stumble across something precious like this.
Yeah, I think for us, I think it just made us think about putting a time capsule in. We wouldn't have thought about it. I mean, doing a redevelopment is a huge amount of work, and we're so busy worrying about all the detail. But actually thinking beyond the moment, it really encouraged us to think about the future a bit more in terms of what we can put into the building now that could be discovered and could tell something about us in the future. So I think it definitely gave us a different perspective on the building work. We spend a lot of time looking backwards and looking at the history, because it's the nature of what we're doing, the history of the building and how the building was originally constructed. But it actually makes us think about the future, and not just the immediate future, but further ahead. So I think it's quite a really something that really draws people's interest as well, for the public and for the audience that you serve in a gallery or a museum. It's something that really captures people's attention and brings people together. And when you think about his family all these years later gathering together, having this reunion, I mean, that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't have done this. So it's kind of, it has a lot of flow-on effect, more than what you would imagine. But just in what we were talking about before, it also reflects your unconscious biases that you might have. We don't know what our own biases are. It's hard to be self-aware. But in 100 years' time, people looking to see what we included in our time capsule will reveal our biases and our perspectives at the time as well. So I think it gives more information to those in the future as well.
Yeah, I'm glad it's inspired you guys to make them. Hopefully you will keep making them, make it a tradition. I know even on an individual perspective, I love making, time capsules once a year, once every 5 years is kind of a life series. So something for the gallery starting off, with the one you found on the wall is definitely a good tradition to go down. And I hope you guys do that. Once you do your time capsule, I hope you also register it through the International Time Capsule Society so we can keep it all organized in one little area. But yeah, any last words? I think this has been such a great story. Thank you so much for coming on, Jennifer. It's really been to learn about the history, and New Zealand is so far away from us. So it's great to have someone on actually speaking about it to us.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And I've learned so much through this whole process, and also from you in this conversation as well. It just makes you think a bit more deeply about, the process that you're going through with laying our new time capsule as well. So yeah, it's been.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to include all the links in this when we post it, and I will send you all of it as well. But again, thank you. I'm excited to see what you guys do in the future and what the gallery ends up looking like when you do the redevelopment. And if I ever come down to New Zealand, if we're ever out of this COVID mess, I'm definitely going to stop there. So again, thanks so much for your time. It was really nice to chat today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys, so we had another wonderful guest from New Zealand this time. I cannot say where she's from. I'm going to butcher it, but Sarjeant Gallery. Jennifer was absolutely wonderful. It was so cool to learn about a accidental time capsule, one that was just found in the wall, and the ripple effect it's had on the community and what they choose to go, how to go forward from here. So if you guys are, a gallery, or maybe you have art that you'd like to preserve, they're doing one, so you can do one too. And some of the tips that she said, acid-free tissue paper and all of those things. So listen back. She dropped some really good piece of wisdom in there. And if you guys are interested in learning more, we'll be linking all the details when we post this podcast. So again, thank you guys so much for coming on to the Hidden World of Time Capsules. We will see you next week for another episode.